13.7 billion years ago, there was a huge explosion called the Big Bang. The sound caused by that huge explosion started to reverberate and spread like Om. There the energy is dispersed as particles, and those particles can be divided into three types. Uh, the lightest source of energy is the electrons, and the heaviest particle is the neutron and the other particle is the proton. The difference in mass between protons and neutrons was very small. Due to the diversity of this trio of rapidly dispersed particles, the force of gravity came into play. The two heaviest particles were concentrated as a pair. The neutron revolved around the proton while proton revolved around the neutron. The electron orbits the lightest type of particle outside the center around which the pair orbits. Electromagnetic energy was created due to the rotation of these three energetic particles. We have talked about the beginning of universe, and in the next part we will talk about the creation of the element. Subscribe to my channel for more scientific talk like this. Be nourished by knowledge. It never ends. Today we have talked about how the particles born and how they combine together and mechanism of that. Today we are going to talk about how that mechanism makes elements, and it's chapter 2. Due to the action of gravity, the atom is the smallest unit that can be formed by combining the trinity of energy particles, and it was hydrogen. And due to the force of gravity, the hydrogen atoms came together and cloud was formed. Due to the extreme heat and pressure, the core at its center began to accumulate two hydrogen atoms each, releasing electromagnetic energy. In this way, the particles can be combined into triads from the second type of atom, which is called helium. A helium atom consists of two electrons orbiting the center of two electrons orbiting the center formed by the combination of two protons orbiting two electrons. Thus, the three particles that came together began to give rise to different elements. Helium and hydrogen atoms collided with each other and became lithium, while carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, silicon, phosphorus, calcium, sodium and chlorine were also born. At each of these stations, electromagnetic energy began to travel as waves. These electromagnetic waves gave rise to billions of sun-like clouds that produced the elements which exploded again under supernova conditions. Under these conditions, heavier elements such as gold, silver, zinc, copper and iron began to form. In the end, uranium atoms born with 92 electrons moving in 7 orbits around 92 pairs of protons and neutrons. The 92 atoms of this element produced their own magnetic waves and glowed with their own colors. Occasionally, single neutrons would crash into the center of an atom with protons or electrons and explode, creating a supernova. Today we have talked about 13.4 billion years ago how universe began. Subscribe to my channel for more scientific talk like this. Be nourished by knowledge and it never ends. Thank you. Yesterday we have talked about elements. Today we are going to talk about solar system and galaxy. In this way, many clouds containing 92 elements were caught by the center of gravity, and only 99% of them were concentrated in hydrogen and turned into helium, creating a huge sun. As the rest of the cloud, made up of other elements, rotates around the sun, due to the force of gravity in it, the planets were formed by collapsing at different distances. Planets such as Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto and the Sun, which travel 9 orbits, became a solar system. As many as 200 billion different solar systems were born. Each of these solar systems began to move in elliptical orbit and their own speed. It is called galaxy, and in all the universe, there are billions and trillions of galaxies are doing the same thing with so many different elements. Traveling 200 kilometers per hour, or our solar system takes 25,920 years to orbit the galaxy. Earth, a molten liquid of metallic elements, was only 12 times hotter than the boiling water. The Earth moved at a speed of 30 km per second, and the day ended in 5 hours. Various elements were added to the Earth with frequent falling of meteorites due to the action of gravity here. Heavier iron and nickel were concentrated, and magnetism was generated due to iron and nickel atoms in Earth's womb, and axis both north and south metals such as calcium, magnesium, silicon, sodium, potassium, aluminium, copper, silver and gold were deposited on the surface of the Earth. Meanwhile, a large asteroid traveling in space collided with the Earth, and part of its elements entered the Earth. The remaining pieces were thrown away and started orbiting the Earth. The parts came together to form the heat, and the Earth's rotation speed slowed down. The day ended in 6 hours. Today we are going to talk about ocean water and the chemical revolution in 3.9 billion years ago. Meanwhile, a meteor shower fell on the Earth. These meteorites contained frozen snow. The snow melted and evaporated and rose and cooled, and rain began to fall. For 20 million years, these meteorites and the rains cooled the Earth, which had been convulsing. The Earth became a huge pan. The cool craters on the Earth's surface were filled with water, which overflowed and flowed down to the lowlands to form the oceans. The Earth was covered by a layer of water. At the same time, the temperature of the atmosphere dropped to 7 to 80 degrees centigrade. The Earth's surface was covered by a layer of water, and the force of gravity came into play again. Due to the force of gravity, the moon was gradually drawn towards to the Earth. Due to the gravitational force of the Earth and the moon, the ocean water was disturbed again. Due to the storms in the ocean water, the elements of the Earth plane mixed with the ocean water. This mixture of elements entered the Earth's womb through cracks in the Earth's crust. The attraction between the Earth and the moon moved away again, and the ocean water was calmed again. Again, after tenth of a billion years, a meteor shower crashed into the Earth. The amino acids in it mixed with the ocean water. Amino acids are chemical compounds formed by the addition of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen and nitrogen. By now, simple compounds had been created from the elements that were decaying in the dark cavities at the bottom of the ocean. Many compounds were formed by adding hydrogen and oxygen atoms to a chain of carbon atoms. Chemical compounds formed without a carbon template became inorganic matter. Phosphorus, oxygen as well as nitrogen and hydrogen compounds also belong to the inorganic type. The formation of the Earth's womb prepared organic and inorganic matter for the first time to collide with electromagnetic waves and ocean water. Through cracks in the ocean floor, organic and inorganic compounds mixed into the ocean water. Today we are going to talk about land and early life. It is chapter 5, land and early life. Gradually, the pressure in the Earth's womb increased further. At the bottom of the ocean, the thin layers burst, and the metal mixture that was inside the womb flowed out. The mixture flowed as lava and settled on the ocean floor. The metals that made up the Earth's crust were also mixed with this lava. For millions of years, this action continued, exposing the ocean to the surface and collided with the air. They became islands. The elements and compounds it had made up the islands cooled further and turned into rocks. The rocks decomposed to form soil. In this way, the land was created due to the islands that emerged all over the ocean. By this time, the 92 elements on which that Earth was built, as well as their compounds, had dissolved in the ocean to the maximum extent. It was chemical solutions. When electromagnetic waves from the sun pass through this solution, the energy required for chemical reaction is obtained. Organic and inorganic compounds interacted to form new compounds. In addition, it has four special compounds, that adenine, thymine, guanine and cytosine. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen are combined, and these four compounds are abbreviated as ATGC. AT joined and became a couple, and GC joined and became another couple. AT and GC were connected to each other due to hydrogen bonds. Four sugar molecules and two phosphate molecules were able to link two AT and GC molecules into ring through hydrogen atoms. This chemical was identified as deoxyribonucleic acid and became abbreviated DNA. The chemical revolution began in the ocean and ended. DNA that was first formed did not react again. Instead, it developed the ability to become two identical subs. This process is also joined by a series of reactions that can provide the energy needed for this process to occur efficiently. All this was jelly submerged in water. Chapter 6: Mutants and Primordial Bacteria. Exposure to electromagnetic waves caused an ATGC molecule that was formed from DNA to escape, and at other times one or more such molecules were added in this way. The mutated DNA and their inherited traits were passed on the new generation. Meanwhile, due to another mutation is produced chemicals belonging to the fatty acid group, and it was able to build a membrane to protect its DNA and jelly. The spherical structure produced by membrane became the cell, and the jelly inside became the plasma. Accompaniment reaction produced DNA that floated and submerged in plasma, resulting in the first organism capable of metabolic function such as sensation, nutrition, respiration, excretion, growth, locomotion, and reproduction. That organism is called primordial bacteria. Due to mutations, new types of relatives were added to the generation of primordial bacteria, and diverse bacteria were born. With the progress of time and space, chemical changes took place in the ocean. Mutations that were good for some bacteria and bad for others. In the natural environment, DNA, with mutations capable of successfully resisting the changes that occurred in it, divided and spread efficiently. In this way, due to the emergence of bacteria suitable for the environment, survival was secured according to the DNA. Mutations occur and new groups of amino acids are added to the primordial DNA to form the longest chemical chain in the ocean. Standing from primordial DNA, every bacteria was made up of various combinations of elements. Oxygen is the most abundant element in any bacteria. Oxygen percentage was 65% and carbon was 18.5%. hydrogen 9.5%, nitrogen 3.2%, calcium 1.5%, phosphorus 1%, potassium 0.4%, sulfur 0.3%, sodium and chlorine 0.2%, magnesium 0.1%. In addition to these, iron, zinc, copper, aluminium, nickel, silver, gold, fluorine, bromine, iodine, etc. contained a large number of elements in very minute quantities. Chapter 7, Plant and Animal Kingdom. During this time, due to a mutation in the DNA strand, a great compound was created in a certain bacterium. Chlorophyll is made up to a carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and magnesium. These chlorophylls were able to absorb the energy of electromagnetic waves between 400 and 700 nanometers in wavelength. A special type of sugar was also born to store the absorbed energy. When carbon dioxide and water were added to produce that type of sugar and store energy in it, oxygen gas came out as a side effect. Oxygen gas had a special ability. It can temporarily combine with another elements or compound. The combustion takes place. The element iron dissolved in ocean water combined with oxygen. It sank to the bottom of the rusty sea and became as a treasure. Gradually, the amount of dissolved oxygen in the ocean increased. Because ocean water is saturated with oxygen, bacteria were able to carry out metabolic activities more efficiently. Meanwhile, another new bacterium was born due to a mutation in the DNA strand. These new predatory bacteria were able to eat the green bacteria and obtain the energy they contained by burning the sugars in green bacteria. These predatory bacteria used oxygen to gain energy and release carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. Meanwhile, the Earth's rotation slowed down further. The time taken for one day increased to 16 hours. Day and night were 8 hours each. Meanwhile, the heat and pressure in Earth's womb increased and the Earth began to break into several parts. The broken tectonic plate moved in one direction for 750 million years and all the islands joined together to form a huge island called Gondwana land. With this, the Earth's rotation slowed down. The time taken for one day was 18 hours. At the same time, the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere dropped to 30 degrees Celsius. Chapter 8, First Apocalypse and Multicellular Kingdom. The pressure in the Earth's womb increased and the volcano erupted again. Carbonic acid was produced as a side effect. This acid precipitates thousands of years of acid rain depleted to atmosphere of carbon dioxide. With this, the temperature of the Earth decreased to minus 50 Celsius. The entire Earth was covered with 3-kilometer ice sheet and turned into an ice ball. Bacteria in the ocean died, while otherwise survived. Life was thus preserved. Earth spent 150 million years as a snowball. Pressure and heat increased again, melt in the ice sheets and erupt in volcanoes. Carbon dioxide again mixed with the air and increased the temperature. The oxygen trapped in the snow returned to the air and the oxygen percentage began to rise. The Earth's rotation slowed down further and the day took 22 hours. The percentage of oxygen on Earth rose to 13%. Bacteria that had sunk to the bottom of the ocean began to rise again. Exposure to electromagnetic waves for 11 hours a day caused the bacteria to mutate into new forms and abilities. Many single-celled bacteria that have been living alone so far have come together to function as single organism. This multicellular organism carried out metabolic activities very efficiently. In the meantime, due to continuous mutations, the most well adapted to change in environment the multicellular life was born. The new traits characteristic of each mutations were found in the members of new generation. At the same time, the number of amino acids pair in the DNA chain increased by tens of thousands. The form of multicellular began to change, better designed for sensation. The cells gathered and the nervous system began to form. Cells that could absorb the vital chemical substance to sustain life came together to form the alimentary canal system. Also, the exocrine system and the circulatory system and the reproductive system evolved to inherit the inherent characteristics, and the protomotile organism was created. Chapter 9: Endocannabinoid System and Ozone Layer. At this time, both unicellular and multicellular organisms were abundant through the ocean. Herbivores evolved to take advantage of the solar energy stored by the both unicellular and multicellular plants. Predators evolved to eat herbivores since the time between birth and death short. It was necessary to complete to make life efficient. Mutations in DNA helped create better competitors. A new mechanism arose in nervous system to find a safe place to rest after hunger and rest after eating, which is the first need of all animals. This is a very efficient mechanism and it is called endocannabinoid system. This system allowed for cuts, scrapes, bruises, infection control as well as prevention of other disease. And it was possible to control pain and manage memory and experience. Plants and animals of various shapes lived throughout the ocean. This mechanism also worked in the multicellular very simple organism called the Hydra vulgaris, which lived in the ocean of this time. With the passage of the time, new species of life were added to the change in ocean environment. At 540 million years ago, arthropods called Arilobita joined the shallow seas and predators such as Nomalocaris appeared. Creation for sensation, the brain and spinal cord were created to make nervous system more efficient. About 530 million years ago, the life of fish like Picaya with small brain and spinal cord began. The brain and nervous system are complex, and the endocannabinoid system is more efficient. 450 million years ago, the temperature of the atmosphere was only 30 degrees Celsius. It added to the atmosphere and gradually increased the amount of oxygen, adding 3 oxygen atoms at a time, and after traveling about 50 kilometers, the ozone layer was formed. This is how the ozone layer was formed over 120 million years. At the same time, the ultraviolet rays that entered the earth until then did not penetrate further and made room for sea creatures to enter the land. Chapter 10: Land Kingdom and Doomsday. 375 million years ago, it mutated in plants that lived in the ocean, and some plants migrated to land and became mosses and ferns. The tiktaalik fish in the ocean needs another similar mutation to adapt to the land. Gradually, tiktaalik's descendants became amphibious creatures that walked on 4 legs. Meanwhile, migrating to moss and fern inhabited land, it first evolved into giant dragonflies, moths, wasps, and spiders. Because it mutated for 15 million years Hylochorus among amphibians became capable of laying eggs on land 360 million years ago. With this, the evolution of reptiles began. The endocannabinoid system regulates the body's metabolism. The land environment gradually became a reptile kingdom. The plants that migrated to the land died and decomposed and began to soil the earth. Beginning 300 million years ago, due to this decomposition process, the organic compounds as well as the energy stored in them were deposited in the earth and underwent changes. Exposed to high pressure and heat, these dead plants later turned into coal. Energy was trapped in a coal. On Earth, with a huge single island surrounded by the ocean, volcanic eruption started again and the compound called sulfur dioxide was added to the atmosphere. In the upper sky, they combined with water vapor and formed sulfuric acid and started to fall in as a rain. Heat, smoke and dust filled the atmosphere. Meanwhile, the atmosphere was further warmed by the evaporation of methane that had been released from the seabed. The temperature rose to 40 degrees Celsius and killing 95% of the ocean and life. Chapter 11, Dinosaur Kingdom and the Third Apocalypse. Another 50 million years passed. Life on this island has been re-established in a different form. Huge trees spread over the island. The giants in these forests were dinosaurs. There were also reptiles and amphibians. Small rodents like mice also lived. About 190 million years ago, the pressure in the Earth's core increased again and the huge island began to break into 5 parts. They later became continents. They were Africa, America, Australia, Europe and the Asia. Some of the land-dwelling reptiles adapted to the Atlantic Ocean and transformed into swimming reptiles such as Ichthyosaurus and Pliosaurus. During this period, the bodies of dead unicellular and multicellular marine organisms were deposited in layers on the ocean floor, subjected to high pressure and heat and turned into petroleum. 65 million years ago today, an 11-kilometer diameter asteroid traveling at a speed of 70,000 kilometers per hour crashed into the Gulf of Mexico in the Atlantic Ocean. After this conflict, the temperature increased to 275 degrees Celsius and the forest and its life burned to ashes in a flash. The dinosaurs that ruled the land for 165 million years became extinct. Only a few reptiles, birds, amphibians and other small animals weighing less than 55 pounds survived. It was the same in the ocean. The island separated from Africa and moved northwards and collided with the Asian continent 50.4 million years ago. Gradually, a mountain range was formed. This is the Himalayas and its peaks are covered with snow. Due to the Himalayan mountain range, climatic changes took place and monsoon rains started. The land south of the Himalayas became India and the island south of India became Sri Lanka. In the future, let's talk about the relationship between India and Sri Lanka and the issues related to them. Chapter 12, Earth and Rainforest on a day like today. The Earth's rotation slowed down further. One day lasted 12 hours. The land and ocean near the equator was exposed to electromagnetic waves for only 12 hours. Because of this, the heat in the afternoon increased to 38 degrees Celsius. At night, the temperature dropped to 18 degrees and the environment cooled down and it is started raining at night. For these reasons, existing life evolved efficiently. around the equator, a new plant kingdom was born and it was full of flowering plants. This new environment was called rainforest. After the last destruction of the world, the rest of the animal species were successfully mutated to mice. New types of mice were born due to the mutation of mice living in caves in the ground. Some of them adapted to live in trees and gave birth to creatures like squirrels. Some migrated to the ocean and gave birth to cetaceans such as whales and dolphins. Others became as monkeys. Seas, mangroves, rivers, creeks, lakes, ponds and jungles near the equator are very fertile ecosystems. So the biodiversity of those environments also increased. The continent of Africa is bisected by the equator. African countries such as Gabon, Kenya, Congo travel through the equator, so you can see rainforest in those countries. During this time, the land on the east side of African continent was pushed on top of each other and a new mountain range was created. It became East Africa Great Rift Valley. Sri Lanka is located north of the equator. Therefore, the rainforest of Sri Lanka can be found close to the southern and central regions. Please subscribe my YouTube channel that called Science Facts. If you can't find that, tap the search bar and type @ Buddhika underscore Munasinghe and you will find them. Thank you for the subscription you have given me and thank you for all. Chapter 13 Monkey Kingdom and Tribalism. The fourth layer of the African rainforest, which has 4 layers, was formed by the collection of the tallest trees. It is the protruding layer. By splitting the fabric until this protruding layer is exposed. The tree canopy was the third layer in this rainforest. The branches of many trees had joined together to form this tree canopy. Therefore, less light was received under the canopy. The trees on the lowest floor were adapted to low light. In this lowest layer were the adaptation of canals and animals. Squirrels and monkeys were also herbivores. In the morning, when the sun was shining, these animals began to walk among the branches in search of food. At night, they used to spend the night on the branches. The arms of the monkeys were longer than the legs, and there was a long tail to maintain balance. Monkeys used to live in gangs, and this time there was a concept of leadership to guide them. That is, the gang had one leader and decision making had started under his relationship. For any threat, also due to the food they get, chemical changes occur every year and they migrated from generation to generation. The rise in East African mountain range obstructed the movement of rain clouds from India. Therefore, from the mountain range to the west, the rain decreased in the area and therefore the fertility decreased. Living in the rainforest, the members of the monkey gang had scarce resources to consume. This led to competition between the stronger monkeys and other monkeys, resulting in deadly battles. For this reason, they divided into two groups to fulfill their needs. One group depended on the trees and the other on the ground for food and necessities. The group that came to the ground evolved and adapted to depend on the ground instead of on the trees. Chapter 14 Incarnation of the Ape. As life in the rainforest slowly became difficult, the monkeys who were walking on all 4 legs in the lowest layer began to walk from place to place in search of food. Eventually, it mutated, resulting in a lineage of tailless apes. Those mutations were important to a successful broadcast. To the east of the African continent, 3 types of tailless apes arose. They are gorillas, gibbons, and chimpanzees. The big toe of their hands was facing a different direction than the other fingers. Therefore, delicate objects like pebbles could be easily handled. Chimpanzees were the smallest of these three apes. The chimpanzees who approached the termites caught and took pieces of sticks between them, and the chimpanzees were able to eat termites. They also used to crush the nuts that had fallen under the trees when the fruit season was over. They were able to use round stones to crush hard nuts. Chimpanzees are driven to use tools because they lack the necessary adaptation to overcome incapacity. They were prompted to use the instruments by the thumb. This is a mutation that occurs in the DNA strand and is one of the most important mutations that have occurred since then. Chapter 15: Grasslands, Forest Fires, and the Desert. Gradually, the Ice Age ended and water filled the depression of the mountain range that had emerged in the east of the African continent, and they became lakes. Lakes such as Tana, Turka, Mobutu, Tanganyika, Malawi, and Nalubale were born. The apes spread into those fertile areas. Gradually, exposure to the rains and rise to a new species of flora in the areas up and down the equator. They were grasses. These grew to a height of about 8 feet and were called savannas. Savannas spread surrounding the barren land and rainforest. Grass seeds germinated with the onset of rain. After the rains, antelopes, zebras, giraffes, rhinos, and elephants, as well as mammals like rabbits and pigs, come to the grasslands. The carnivores here were lions, tigers, and hyenas. The carnivores living in the swamps are crocodiles. The rain ended and the earth began to dry. Grasslands gradually dry out and become prone to fires due to strong winds and intense sunlight. The winds causes the dry grass to catch fire. When the stone pebbles are heated, the chemical compounds in it combine with oxygen and cause a temporary fire spread and destroy the grass in an instant. When savanna grasslands are destroyed due to forest fires and the heat, the spread of these grasslands decreases and desert environments begin. Due to the extreme cold at night and extreme heat during the day, the desert north of the equator of the continent of Africa is called the Sahara, and the desert in south called the Kalahari. At the same time, due to the thrusting of the tectonic plates, the mountain range in the east of the African continent had risen 5,000 meters and was 6,000 meters long. Further east, due to lack of monsoon rains, the rainforest shrunk and became jungles surrounded by grasslands. Chapter 15: Incarnation of the Mankind. A mutation in the ape's body resulted in an ape with a straight body that could run fast. This skull was larger than that of his parents. The brain inside the skull was enlarged to fit the skull. His body was hairless and sweating was efficient. Hands not used for walking helped in a new inventions, and the human group with the mutation was the first to discover fire. Chimpanzees used pieces of sticks to get termites out, and the new human species has adapted to eating fish from the lakes using sticks. These activities help their brains to develop rapidly. Due to the endocannabinoid system, the concept of relaxation and well being of the body had entered the mind.